Hey guys and girls, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate your company. It's great to see you again. We've got a lot to talk about today and I'm pretty excited because I've got two new products to discuss. So one will be a vintage flash from Viltrox, which is a wonderful little unit, and I can't wait to talk about that. But just before we get into that for a few moments, I'll discuss the other purchase, and it's very relevant to photography, and that is a purchase of a new computer. Now you say maybe to yourself, oh, what's the computer got to do with lenses and cameras? Well, really, because we don't send our film off to laboratories anymore to get developed in a darkroom, we all do it ourselves at home and edit it on our computers. You've got to have a capable computer, one that can do your photos and edit them well, and one that can also edit a high definition video. And let's face it, a lot of us are doing 4K video now, anything up to 60 to 120 frames per second, and sometimes we're even using raw files like ProRes RAW. And of course, that's a high demand product. So yeah, if you don't have a computer that's capable, you're going to struggle. And that's exactly the situation that I was in just recently. My computer I had previously was a massive tower computer, had twin graphics cards in SLI, pro level gaming motherboard and i7 processor, water cooled. It was like in its day, 10 years ago, that was unbelievable. It was really state of the art. But unfortunately, year by year, it started to deteriorate, started playing up, a little bit of crashing, a little bit of component failure. Then I wasn't able to upgrade the Windows 10 to Windows 11 because it just didn't have the software in the old motherboard. So it ended up being an issue where I had to do something in order to keep relevant. And so what I decided to do is really just scrap that computer rather than try and throw good money after a bad unit now. And I got rid of it, tossed the whole thing out, nearly broke my heart because I sort of loved that thing for many years, and then bought a new computer. And the new one I bought was simply a kit computer, really. It's from HP, Hewlett Packard, and it's called an Omen computer, and it's like a kit. So what happens is you buy the whole tower, and the tower's got everything in it. Motherboard, graphics cards, it's got Windows 11 set up, the processors, cooling, fans, everything's done for you. All you do is plug and play. And I got that at what I consider a reasonable bargain. So I spent $2,850 Australian, which is around $2,000 US, on this package of a desktop tower, and I'm very happy with it. Now, the reason I got it so cheap was because I got it as last year's model. So this year they've just released all those 5 series graphics cards from NVIDIA. So you got a 570, 580, 590. That's the latest tech, and they're marvelous. They're very good. Use a little bit more power, but they're very, very functional. But I didn't need necessarily the latest. All I needed was something that was capable. So I got last year's product, which was the graphics card was a NVIDIA 470 Ti Super, which is very close, very similar to a 480 graphics card. It has an i7 processor and all the cooling and fans you would ever need. So it functions very well and I'm very pleased with it. Now the reason I'm telling you that is just to show that sometimes you just got to give up the ghost and then throw away the old rubbish and embrace the new. And it's very much what we've been talking about with cameras for a while, about the old DSLRs. So you might have had a D810 or a D850, a D750, and they served you well for many years. And there's nothing wrong with them. They still work very well. But when you've gone from something like a D810 and then you pick up a Z9 with all its features and fast autofocus and so on, you just can't believe it. It's like a whole different world. And that's what the modern computer is like. So if you've been sticking with a 5 to 10-year-old computer and just putting up with it, once you get something that is relatively new, you won't believe the difference, the speed and the capability. And so it's a very similar analogy, I suppose. But while we're talking on the computer, there's one other aspect that's really important to talk about, and that is all the accessories that go with that. Now, we often talk about the same thing with cameras and lenses. You know, if you were going to buy a nice brand new Z-mount camera, you're not necessarily that excited about adapting old lenses to it with FTZ adapters because it can be a bit cumbersome and lots of extra components, and really you'd like to upgrade to the latest tech and benefit from the Z technology. And when you do this with, like, for example, you buy a new computer, you've got to really do the same with all your accessories. So I had to buy a new monitor as well. And when I say had to, I could have used the old one, but I wanted one that was capable for the display port. The display port in the new computers are DisplayPort 1.4. And so I had to buy a brand new cable, a DisplayPort 1.4 cable, so it didn't bottleneck. And then I bought a monitor, a 32-inch 4K monitor, that was also capable for DisplayPort 1.4. And that means that flow of information is unhindered and doesn't just choke into a point and then slow down. So you've got to get the whole package right in order to optimize your performance. That's cabling, monitors, computer, everything. And so that's what I've just done recently, and I'm feeling very happy with it. And I just wanted to explain that I was excited about my new product, and my video editing should be a very smooth and fluid and fast experience now for me, which is great. So encouraging anybody to upgrade when they can, because it does make the editing experience so much more joyful. For example, with Adobe, I use a lot of Adobe products like Lightroom. I use Adobe Premiere Pro, for example, and these are all upgrading to Windows 11 updates, but I couldn't update them, so I was actually using old technology all the time. So just sometimes you've got to just do it, spend the money and get the better results, and that's what I've done. So enough about me and my purchase of the computer. Let's get on with this new flash unit, which is very exciting. So let me just show you it. I'll show you it on the camera initially, so you get an idea of just what it looks like, and you can see it here. I'll bring up some close-up pictures so you can see all the detail, of course, and just what it looks like and how it'll perform in a minute. But it's actually a very beautiful unit. And when you're seeing it here on a retro style camera like the ZFC with the black and silver, and it's got the black and silver lens, and then this little flash on top is also black and silver, you can see how it matches quite beautifully and looks quite cute, doesn't it? It's very elegant, very compact, certainly weighs next to nothing as a package, and this is a great little combination to take around with you. So if you're doing some sort of street photography, you're at a festival or a park, going on holidays, this is an awesome little kit to bring with you that weighs very little and performs extremely well. So I'll just take it off for a minute so I can show you the actual flash unit on its own so you get an idea what's going on. So here it is here, and as you can see, it's quite tiny in the hand. I mean, you put it to your hand, it's actually, engulfed by your fist. It's quite tiny. You see it has a little Fresnel lens element on here to disperse the light and break it up a little bit. And on the back, you have some buttons. Now, the buttons are the power levels. So it starts off at like 1/64th and goes to 1/32nd, 1/8, 8th, 16th, 8th, quarter, and then half and full power. Now, that's magnificent. I really love this dial, and I love the little numbers on it, and I also like the fact it clicks. So let me just illustrate that. I'll bring it up to the microphone so you can hear it. So you hear that? You can actually audibly hear you changing the knobs. And that's not unlike when you're using this ZFC and its knobs and buttons. It's very tangible, you feel textural. And I like that, it's very charming. On the back also, you'll notice there is a center light, and that there is this very copper bronze sort of a disc here, which is, I suppose, quite retro, isn't it? Bronze. And here we have a on-off switch. So it's very simple, it's just on and it's off, off, on. And when it's on, beautifully, this big green light comes on. So you can't misunderstand that, it's turned on and actually active, but also that it's ready to go, because green is for go. So when you see the green light, it's ready to flash. And so, of course, when it's on the camera, you're looking at the back of the camera, you always see that the flash is active and ready to go. However, it's not distracting to anybody else in the front. So you're not showing off this bright light to anyone. But you know it's there and you know it's functioning. So that's terrific. It's very simple use. It's very tactile, simple for the strength. You're not having to learn programs and button layouts and menu systems and so, no, nothing complicated. It's really just on, off, and bright and pale. And that's all there is to it. Very simple. Now on the side, we also have some extra little attachments. You have a little slave buttons here. Slave 1, slave 2, and off. Now, what's the point of all that? Well, that just means that what you can do here is you can choose to have extra flashes and synchronize them. So if you have an extra flash, you can have, say, the main flash on the camera, and that's firing off and triggering this one here, which you've got the slave mode, and you can have it on a different angle or behind them as backlighting, etc., which is an interesting option. If I'm doing any professional lighting though for modeling or portraits, I'm probably not going to be using this unit. I've got about 6 or 7 of these flashes. I would definitely be using them with diffusers, not something like this. So this is great for what it is. For what it is as a compact little handy flash. And let me just explain what it is. Okay, you remember in the old days, we used to have the old DSLRs, and I'll give you an example. We spoke about old cameras just before with the computers as an analogy. I remember the D750, D810, D850, etc. Those old cameras, D500. They all had pop-up flashes, didn't they? Little pop-up flash. You could activate a button, pop, up comes a little tiny flash. It wasn't very big or powerful, but it was there. And when it was very dark and you needed to light something up, you could put this little flash up, fire the button and pop, you've got a bit of light on your subject. And it was just convenient because it was always there. So even though it wasn't very flattering, it did something. There was a product you could buy called a Gary Fong Puffer Plus, which is sort of illustrated here, and you could put that over onto the mount, hot shoe mount, and it would cover the pop-up flash and diffuse the light a bit, make it a bit softer. We'll talk more about that just a little later. But that was a great system. You know, you could use various different filter cards and so on over that to give you some soft light. So why am I bringing that up? Because this unit here, when on the camera, is really a pop-up flash replacement. That's really what this sort of thing is. Because it's so compact, light, portable, and effortless and simple, it's really, in my opinion, a pop-up flash replacement. It is not a replacement for professional lighting of any sort. So just so you keep that in mind and you get the context of what we're talking about here and how you use this. So this is, as I say, street photography, party photos. You're at a party at night, you need some light in a dark room or outside in the picnic area at the back. You could be roaming around the parklands and you just want to make your subject pop a bit so that you don't have to worry about shadows, like they might be backlit by the sun, and this of course can brighten up the subject and make them pop and stand out. So this is a very handy, convenient unit for its context. And I like it. I love the look of it. I love the way it works, and I think it's very, very functional. And I'll show you test sample photos in just a moment. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about with this unit was the context of a diffuser, because this is actually pretty strong. When it's on a high power and you've just got an unfiltered Fresnel lens here, this is very harsh lighting. It's very directional, straight, low to the lens, and it just blasts light. So there are options. So they give you an option with it. They give you this little diffuser cap that you can just pop over, and that does help with the diffusion. It probably breaks down about a third of the lighting and softens it that much and reduces the shadows and the harshness. But if you want to reduce it by, say, 50% or more, you can do what I've done, and this is a little bit tricky, just a little bit of engineering. I'll show you some photos of the details of how it works. But I've got that the Puffer, Gary Fong Puffer pop-up flash cover, and I've mounted it to their diffuser cap that Viltrox provide. And it's very simple. It's a few rods with some super glue just to make sure they stay still, a little bit of tape, and that way it stays on and it stays secure. And then all you have to do to mount this diffuser to the flash is just pop it over. That's all there is. That's not coming off easy. That's really good. And now you've got a much broader gap between the Fresnel lens and the flash and the diffuser, which of course amplifies the softness of the light. And then when you put it on, it's no more really cumbersome or awkward to use, and it gives a much more diffused light. So I think this now is a much better system for doing a little lighting. There we go, and you get a nice soft diffused flash. So I'm very impressed with this little diffuser. I'll just show you here on the camera. Of course, I will bring up more detailed photos so you'll see it in all its glory. But as you can see, this is basically what we're talking about here. And I think that works really well, and it's not scary. Now, if you've got a big diffuser, that's a little bit intimidating. People know you're obviously trying to do lighting, and they could be put out by that. But this one here is very compact. When you want to put it in your camera bag, it's not a burden. You can leave it together if you wish. It still fits very small in any camera bag. And of course you can pop it off and put it away also if you should wish. It's very easy to disassemble and to reassemble. So I think that's an amazing thing. Now we're talking about camera bags. Here's a modest little camera bag. It's only a small one, but a little low pro bag. But just have a look here. You can put your camera in there. You can put your flash in here. And look at all that room you've got. A modest little bag, and you've got a ton of room for your wallet, mobile phone, even a second lens if you should want to, and there's plenty of space, and I reckon that's an awesome little idea that it's so compact. So you can carry this around with you on a little shoulder strap, and it's not particularly burdensome, and yet you've got all your camera gear and lighting in there in one. You even throw in a few filters, and that's another thing I want to talk to you about. We'll talk about little filters and why you might need them. So we're just talking about that Viltrox flash, and there is something else I wanted to talk about, and that was the context again of why we're using this. So let's just go back and review that again. This is basically it's a pop-up flash replacement. It can be diffused. We can use items like this that I was talking about, where you can generate something out to make it quite soft and diffused, and be very practical for better lighting and more comfortable. But apart from that, if I want to really use lighting, am I turning to this for my portrait use? Well, no. Let me just get some illustrations so you understand context of it. If I'm going to do portrait photography, I'm going to be using a minimum of a flash setup like this, which is a full frame flash setup here. It's a Nikon DSB910. Excellent with a little bounce card softbox combo on this, and that would be the minimum I would use. And what I'll be doing here is I'll either hold it in one hand and take the photo with the other, or I'd have it up on a stand. So I might have it up on a light stand and then be taking my photos with the other hand, and it could be used in any direction or angle that I want to give a nice soft lighting. This would be the minimum for actual portrait photography. Excuse me while I get something else. Next stage up would be this bad boy. Now what is this? This is actually the same sort of a thing. It's sorry, I'm just trying to get it in camera so you can actually see. I'll go the other side actually. This is a Rogue flash bender, principally. Rogue flash bender with a very, very large softbox on it. You can see the big softbox there? Yeah, so it puffs it out. So you've got a softbox diffuser anyway, here, the large XL Rogue bender, and softbox comes with it. And then on top of that, I'll put this extra diffuser to give a beautiful round soft image. Now I've made a little frame up to support all this, and you can see down here I have a large speed light with a trigger and a ball head, which I'd put on a tripod. And what this rig enables me to do is to position it anywhere I want, close to the subject, further away if it's a group, and get a soft lighting wherever I want. And it's only requiring the power of one speed light, this one. I would have another light on a tripod or light stand behind them for backlighting. But this is the step up again from using a modest system with one hand or one little softbox. This is stage 2. Now stage 3 I'm not going to go and pick up and get for you because I'll never fit it in the setting here, but I would use maybe a 5 to 6 foot round softbox or an octo box, and that will give better lighting. Again, there might be anything from 2 to 4 speed lights in that, and that'll give me heaps of power but also lovely big soft light. So I'm just getting you into the context that there's lighting and that there's lighting. So this is something better than nothing, an equivalent replacement like of a pop-up flash. But if you're going to do some serious portrait photography, that's not really what that's for. That's for in a pinch. Use something big, a big softbox and a proper speed light minimum. So I just thought I'd add that in there so we understand the context of what this unit is for and what it is good for. So we were talking about photography and the softening of the light using the little Z1 from Viltrox, a retro style flash, and then I was using this little diffuser cap, and I was showing you that I believe that this does a wonderful job of softening the light. So just to prove the context difference between the Fresnel lens on the flash and then when you use the diffuser as well, and what the comparison difference is in softening, I'm going to use my model robot. Okay, good old robot here from Lost in Space. Who doesn't know him? Everybody knows this famous little guy. And I use this guy particularly for a reason when it comes to lighting and illustrating, because he's three-dimensional. He's a good little size to get a decent photo with. I was actually taking those photos that I'll show you in a moment with this 85mm lens. So an 85mm Viltrox. And I was taking photos of this guy with that. And the important thing about me illustrating that is this is quite a chunky, girthy lens. And yet, even on the little ZFC with that flash on top, it did not overshadow in any way the image, did not cast shadows. So some people might tell you, oh, if you've got a really big lens, it's because the flash is so low profile and down there to the camera, it's going to cast shadows over everything. I never experienced that with any of the photos I took, whether they were macro, whether it was of this guy, whether it was outside or objects in any way. So it would have to be, I think, an extremely large lens. Now, as I say, an 85 portrait lens at 1.8, they're generally a decent girthy lens, but maybe if you've got something like a 70 to 200 or an 85 f1.2 or something massive like that, like a Plena, yeah, you might have issues because they are so big and girthy. But let's face it, they're not the context of the lenses you use with a little ZFC. Maybe with a ZF at certain occasions, but then you wouldn't be using that flash if you're taking professional photography or portraits. So in context of what it does, it's a very good unit, and you can use up to decent size lenses. I would say a 24 to 70, 2.8 would be no problem at all. If you're a little bit nervous, just take the hood off. You know, the hood is something I take off as standard in almost all my photography. Even my birding, I rarely use a hood at all. I just find it's in the way and cumbersome and pretty much does nothing because I don't really take photos directly into the sun very often. In fact, almost never. So there's some backlighting, but it's usually not coming down the barrel of the lens. So I don't find a hood is particularly useful for me. In context though, I wanted to show you the little fella. And when you see these photos, and I'll go back and forth a few times with the photos so you can get it in your head, you can actually have a look and you know what you're looking for. One photo will be of just the harsh Fresnel lens, and the second photo will be with this diffuser cap thing I've made up on. And what I want you to do is I want you to have a look at the shadow cast by the raised arm onto the body here ahead of the robot, and then the overall shadow coming to this side of the robot against the back wall, the white wall here. So I'm taking the photos like on this bench towards this back wall, and what you'll see is the shadow cast. And I want you to have a look at that so you understand the extra softening that this little compact diffuser will provide for you. And I say it's at least 50% softening. I think it makes a massive difference. So for the couple of dollars that thing's worth to buy and put on, and a little bit of fiddling in the garage, I found it really very much worth it. And I'm going to be using it 90% of the time. So again, just look at the shadows at the side here and the shadow cast behind on the white wall, and you'll see how much softer it is when you see the diffuser on. It's quite remarkable. So thank you very much for assisting, Robot, but I just wanted to show you what that was all about when those images come up. So I'll just bring them back out of the bag. Now, with this flash, it's very important to understand that it is a very basic product, right? So unlike a flash such as this, you get a big Nikon D910 or something like that, SB910. It has a lot of menu systems, it has a lot of options, it's very powerful. You know, it's complicated to use maybe for someone not experienced. But this one only has those features of it's low or it's high, and that's pretty much about it. Because of that, because there's no TTL, because there's no adjustment in the menu, it has one rule of shutter speed that's practical, and that is around 200th of a second. So when you're choosing your menu and you want to choose your shutter speed, you cannot darken up the flash or the photo when you're using the Viltrox Vintage Z1. You can't darken up the image by increasing your shutter speed to 1,000th of a second. You do that, I'll show you the test examples of what happens. What happens is the curtain is not keeping up with the light, and you're going to find you're actually chopping your photo in half with darkness because it just can't compete. It can't sync. So in order to get your flash to sync, you want to keep it around 200 to 250th of a second. I've found 250th of a second is fine with the ZFC, and I'm sure it's pretty much the same with the ZF if you're using it for that. So they're the two cameras I'm going to talk in context with this unit, because it is a retro style small unit, and that's very suitable and pretty for those cameras. So do keep in mind 200th of a second, that's an important detail. If you need to darken an image at all, what I'm going to recommend is just some very inexpensive filters. So let's say you've got to take the edge off something, you can use, what have I got here, ND4, and I've got an ND8. So any one of these two, or a combination of the two if you really need to darken something up, if it's a very bright day. But either way, just so you realise, ND filters is probably a very handy thing to have in the bag if you're needing to darken an image up, because you can't rely on the shutter speed. Of course, you can decrease your ISO if you had that up a bit, or you could also increase the aperture. You can go from, let's say it's f2.8, you can go to f5.6, and that will darken the image if you're happy with the way that will look. But just keep that in mind because it's an important detail, and I wouldn't want you to miss out on that. So what are the other options with this flash? What else can it be useful for? Well, there's plenty of different options. You can start using, if you wanted to, a trigger system. So if you wanted to use trigger systems and have it off camera, you could. You mount the trigger onto the camera, you've got a receiver on your little flash unit, you can mount it on a tripod stand and have it at various angles, or even backlighting if that's what you wanted. So it's not like it's useless at all. No, it's got many options, but you just got to have accessories to make that work. The other thing I would like to talk to you about is macro photography, which it works very well with. One of the advantages of it being actually quite low to the camera and small is that it's very easy to mount a little bounce card on it and get your macro photography. Now, I'm not going to be using macro photography with this little lens, but let's say we're using, for example, a Viltrox 50mm. Now you can choose any millimeters you like. I found 50 quite good for macros, quite handy. You could use, for example, 85 as well if you wanted to just take the hoods off. So when you're doing macro, always take the hoods off, because the hoods just then shadow the subject, and that of course defeats the whole purpose. Now how are you going to get that light down here in front of the lens now? Well, that's simple. A little $9 to $10 bounce card like this, which you can buy online on eBay, and let's say $8 or $9, very, very cheap. And beautifully enough, and I thought this was quite funny, it actually matches the whole retro style, because on the back of it, or front, depends which way you're using it around, because there is the elastic strap both ways, but you notice it's silver and black. The camera in silver and black, so it sort of fits the whole retro styling, sort of matches nicely. So all you have to do is slip it over the top here like this. Very quick and simple. There we go. We've got our little diffuser on now. And what that's going to do, as you can see, is when you take your macro photo, it's going to bounce the light down in front of the subject. Now let me illustrate. I've got a few little subjects here. I've got a little squirrel with an acorn, a little seal, and if I can pick it up, here we go. I've got no nails because I just cut my nails, so it's a bit tricky. A little gold coin. Tiny, tiny little things. And with these, so we just put this on, and as you can see now, it's just going to bounce the light right in front of the lens. You can see the project there, down it goes. So if I'm taking photos of these little characters here, you can see how it's going to get the light exactly where you want it. If you can see the perspective there. So what I'm going to do, you take it in there, you get your little photo, you take your little shot, bang, pop, take your little macro shot. I'm not going to muck around with settings of manual and getting it all into macro mode now, but I've taken test sample shots previously, and I'll show you these exact subjects as macro with this unit and this exact camera, lens and bounce card combination. So you see it does work, and I'm not just making stuff up. So that's what I recommend, one of those for $8. You got your speed light, the appropriate length lens. You can set it to manual if you like, which makes things very easy, because then you're just sort of rocking back and forth until you get focus and pop, and it works beautifully. So you can use it for your photos in general, street photography, parks and barbecues. You can use it for macro photography. It's got an amazing amount of uses, and the fact that it's light and compact. Now, the one other thing I would like to talk to you about, and I just put these things away because that's actually my wife Tracy's collections of stuff, and I don't want to damage them. So I should also mention just briefly that the use of macro requires extension tubes if you're using a conventional lens, if you don't have a macro specific lens. And this here again is a Viltrox product. 2 extension tubes together from Viltrox in a kit cost about $40. Very inexpensive, and they make macro magic for you. So all we've got to do now is mount these. These are Z-mount usable with full autofocus capability. So you're not compromising in any way with these. There's nothing in them. There's no glass in these. These are extension tubes only, so they don't change image quality whatsoever. So whatever quality of lens you're using, these are just amplifying that. So just to illustrate again, we're going to put our little bounce card on. And now I've got the bounce card on, but with the little diffusers. And now when you want to do your little macro photography, I get our little squirrel friend there, and you want to take the photo now, you just got to get into the focus point. When you've got focus, there we are, and pop, and we've got an image. So it's that simple. Very, very high quality unit, very, very easy to use. I highly recommend it. I think it's a fantastic little gear. So anything from Viltrox, whether it be your extension tubes, your lenses, your little speed lights and flashes, they're all pretty good products, and I give them 2 thumbs up anyway. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that it has a USB mount. Now what's the USB port all about? Well, this is charging. So isn't that fantastic? The batteries are internal. They're rechargeable lithium inside it. So you don't have to worry about replacing little, AA batteries or something like that and having a plethora of those around with you, or them always running out at the last moment. This will charge, and you'll get up to 400 flashes with it in a day. And the beauty of the USB charging is, if you've got your car handy and you've got a USB cable, you can plug it in as you're driving to the venue if you forgot to charge it, and top it up before you get there. And on the way home, you can charge it on the way home when you're driving with the USB, just like you would your mobile phone in the car, and you can charge the thing up all the time. So it's able to be recharged all the time without worrying about silly batteries everywhere. So I just think I wanted to run you through that. I'm quite impressed with it. I think it's a beautiful looking unit, and it's very, very fully functional for all the things that it's appropriate for. So I hope you're enjoying that. I highly recommend you buying one. You know, the thing was $50 US, which is about $80 Australian, and that's delivered. And I think that is an incredible price. And I've mentioned this a lot with Viltrox. You know, you might feel I'm a bit of a shrill for Viltrox products. I have so many of them. But it's not about that they're better than Nikon. They're not better than Nikon, but they're just better value. You know, I can buy 2 or 3 of these items for any one Nikon product, and that just means my collection is bigger and I got more choices with the photography. So I'm sort of loving it, and I've never had any issue with them that they don't work. So I just wanted to say I highly recommend the product. I think it's a little ripper, and you don't buy one, I think you're mad. You know, it's pretty much like that little Viltrox 20mm 2.8 prime they make, little kit one for a couple of $100. You know, if you don't own one of those, there's something wrong with it, because it's so cheap and good. Why wouldn't you have one? So that's my summary of the product for the day. I hope you find that interesting. Thank you for being patient with me and seeing me through it, and I hope you have a lovely day.